I think our position at 5 years in is finally, I feel like I know where we're on the right track. And that is to be taken 5 years of belief.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
to get to that point. If I had known from the beginning it was going to take me 5 years before I actually was really confident where we were going, I would never have done it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really hard. But I think my naivety is good.
Like when you're, yes, yeah. Whereas when you're in the thick of it, you just kind of get on with it.
You just keep going.
Welcome back to Artfully Crafted. My name is Alienor, and each week I travel to a craftsperson's studio, interview them and show you their work. This week we're going to Angel to meet Eppie Thompson. She's a designer, multidisciplinary artist and entrepreneur. This is a slightly different interview in the sense that, unlike all the other makers I've interviewed so far, Eppie sells kits rather than finished pieces. I thought this would make for an interesting new angle in case anyone watching this channel is feeling inspired to be creative but unsure where to start. Rather selfishly, I also really wanted to interview Eppie because she's one of a handful of people who unknowingly inspired me to start on this exciting and rather fraught entrepreneurial path. So here goes. Hi, Eppie.
Hi, Eleanor.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking at this space online for, I feel like I've experienced it in some way, but it's even better in person. It's really cool to see all your work displayed.
Thank you. It's very, very full of stuff, very busy.
Yeah, but
ever growing.
More is more, you know?
Yeah, but I do think I'm getting to a point where I need sort of partition walls just so I have more wall space.
Yeah, or just, raise the roof.
Exactly. I need to go higher.
So do you want to say a little bit about, your work, the materials that you work in, methods, and, I guess the subject as well?
Yeah, exactly. So I run the Fabled Thread, and the Fabled Thread sort of started out as originally it was meant to kind of just be an embroidery kits business, and part of that's because I fell head over heels in love with the process of sewing and thought other people would too, and so I wanted to design pieces unlike anything else out there on the market that would make people want to sew. And that was about 5 years ago, and since then, though, the whole thing has sort of grown in purpose. And so now I would say that as a business, we're just a business focused on empowering creativity across multiple mediums. And whilst at our core, we have textile art, and so lots of kind of embroidery, needlepoint, things like that. We also now have so many different mediums people work in and a creative community. And I am sort of passionate about encouraging more people to be creative, to build their own creative confidence, to start making stuff, because I genuinely do think it's sort of a life-changing experience. So as a business, we're sort of small business, big mission that we're on. So
do you want to maybe talk us through a little bit the sort of like structure? Because I think, as you say, it started as the embroidery kits, but now there's like lots of layers to what you do and different ways for people to engage, right?
So I think we've got kind of, I'd say kind of 4 key parts of the business. So we have our kits, which are like our sewing needlepoint kits, and they'll be for framed pieces like everything around me, or for cushions and things like that. So we have our kind of core kits. We then have a framing and decorative painting side of the business, and all of that was more stemmed from the idea that I couldn't find frames that I wanted to go with my pieces. So I started designing my own, and then suddenly people really liked it, and now actually framing is about kind of 40% of our business is actually framing. Then we have a teaching side of business where we have lots of virtual courses that teach decorative painting, different sewing techniques, but also we have a new one just launching, which is all just about creative method, regardless of medium. It's about kind of breaking down the creative process. And then the final bit of the business, we have a community. And that one is a kind of virtual community, but it's built of people who want to explore more of their own creativity, find their own creative voice, engage with other people. And we do loads of virtual talks and kind of challenges and things together. And so that's kind of how the business has happened. It's all kind of grown more from what people have asked me for than necessarily me thinking that's how I envisioned it from the beginning.
Yeah, so you started with embroidery, but then you've been sort of in conversation with your community,
Exactly,
with your customer base, and listening to what they want and responding to that.
Exactly, and also responding for my own interests. Like when I started the business, I had only been sewing for about 2 years. So when I started the business, I wasn't great. I didn't have a lot of technical skill. Slowly my skill has grown, and therefore how I want to work on my own creative practice has also changed. And I want the business to be able to accommodate my interests too.
Yeah.
And so as I've gotten more experimental in what I'm doing, I'm sort of taking people on that journey too. So a lot of our new products, like say teaching just a creative method, is partly because I want other people to go through the journey I've been on.
Well, I guess also you will have had some customers who were there from the beginning who probably actually have grown in skill alongside you
Exactly.
in a way, right?
And even with like lots of our customers, we see people go on a journey, and I don't want people to be on kits forever, because I think kits are amazing for confidence building, and I think if you don't have a lot of confidence, they're a great way of you learning that you can make something that you're really proud of.
Yeah.
But I think the real joy comes from creating your own pieces, and what I want to do. Exactly, and that kind of, and I do think that impacts your entire life. And so part of the way the business is structured is almost like I want to take you on a journey, and I want to give you the confidence to stop doing kits. I want to give you the confidence knowing that you've got support there, and someone to help you every single step of the way, because it's intimidating. Like I think it's incredibly uncomfortable, and it is very stressful, and I think if you don't have support, you'll give up like on the creative process if you're not innately confident. So
do you ever worry that by trying to enable people to stop doing the kits, in a way you're making your own business redundant?
I think not really. I think
sorry, it's a trick question.
No, I don't know, but it's something I really worry about, because particularly, one of the things we're doing right now is when I do a design process, I make loads of cutout shapes, and I use those cutout shapes to inform my designs, and it's why I'll have motifs that repeat across different ones of my designs, because they're kind of cutouts that I really like. One of the things we're doing at the moment is we are scanning and digitizing our entire library of cutouts to give away to people.
Wow.
And so obviously there's a sort of, but I don't. I'm not in this to sell my own art. I don't sell finished pieces. I do this business, and I'm passionate about this business because I want other people to get the joy that I get out of making. If I try and the reality is, people can create what I'm doing right now. You'll never create the next idea. And if I'm protective about what I do now, it will never serve me well.
Yeah.
I would much rather share and have absolute confidence that I still have something to offer.
Yeah, you could spend time protecting what you're already doing, or you could just like move on and keep coming up with new ideas.
Exactly. And the first time I teach kind of freestyle workshops where people in the workshops design their own pieces. And the first one I taught, I did have like an anxiety at the end, because at the end of the class, people's designs were really good. And then I had this moment of, oh my God, what have I done? But then actually, like the moment you think, wait, that's just amazing, that it shows actually that there's nothing special about what I'm doing. It's an entire method, and I would rather everyone learnt that method.
You're almost more of an educational business, I guess.
We are 100%. Our entire business is teaching. Like we do kits. Like everything about my business is teaching, and it's the same thing goes with like frames. We started off just selling hand painted frames, and now the majority of our framing sales are unpainted frames and paints and stencils, and I'm so happy about that, because I love the idea that people tend to like stay in their lane when it comes to craft, and I think we're quite good at nudging people to try something different. I love the idea that you could like take the materials and create something totally different from it. So I'm not worried about our aesthetic. I think that would actually stifle the business if I did.
So you come from quite a creative family. You share that quite widely,
yeah.
right? So I think you
Yeah,
said is it your granny who's kind of an inspiration, I guess?
Well, both my grannies, on both sides, they both stitch. One of my grannies is the younger granny. She's sort of about to turn 90, and she actually is one of my outsourced stitchers. She does a load of my prototypes for me, and so she's kind of working very hard right now on a new one. And then my other granny is about to be 102, and she still stitches every day. And they're not. Neither of them are. Maybe they'll resent me saying this, but neither of them are sort of like creative stitchers in terms of they're not coming up with their own designs. They're not doing novel things, but stitching is something they've always done. The one who is actually the creative is my mum, and my mum is my mum was a social worker, and sort of then when we were at secondary school, she went and did an art degree and does lots of making stuff. But from a young age, she's just always made me think I'm creative. And so I've never once doubted my creativity because of my mum. And I started this business having sewn. I came up with the idea having sewn for 3 months. I didn't know anything for the first, the only reason I did that is because the confidence my mum gave me that I never even questioned it.
Because some people would have said that's overconfident. You've been doing something for 3 months and now you're launching a business about it. Some people would criticize that maybe.
Exactly,
you know?
but I think my mum sort of made. I never thought. Obviously you worry about the technical side of can I do a business. I never worried about the creative side of the business. I never worried would I be able to come up with ideas and I just think it's genuinely a confidence thing. I think it's my mum just gave me the best gift of making me sort of feel good from a young age.
And I do think a lot of being creative is that confidence thing, because a number of people I think who will say, oh, I'm not creative, but I've found, and I used to be one of those people, but actually even more you surround yourself by creativity, and even if you just like dip a toe into trying to be creative, it snowballs.
Absolutely.
And you find
100%.
yourself being somewhere you never thought you would be.
Yeah, I think there's so many misconceptions about creativity. I think this whole thing that you need any kind of decent technique to be able to create a decent piece of art, I think that's absolutely false. And I think sometimes technique can destroy a good piece of art. I do think this idea that creativity is innate, I think is totally wrong. I think creativity is entirely confidence driven. I genuinely feel really strongly that we are all given completely wrong idea about what creativity is, and it all too often is wrapped up in the idea of can you draw, and basically if you can't draw, which who's to say if you can or can't draw firstly, but I think the idea of creativity being so kind of wrapped up in something as technical as that is ridiculous.
I like that you're saying that, because I think there's a lot of the people we've been meeting on this project, a lot of them say that drawing is the core of their practice. And so actually with some people we've been, and there are some who say, no, drawing is not at all part of my practice, but others feel very, very strongly that without drawing they wouldn't have a practice, that it's, even though their practice, not the end products might not be drawing, that the start of it always comes back to drawing. So it's quite interesting to see that,
Well, I think you have to draw in terms of like if I was doing a new embroidery design, I'd have to draw it on paper first. But the issue is it doesn't matter if it's this whole idea of what would someone perceive to be good. I think my absolute worst drawings make my absolute best pieces of art. And I think if your final medium is going to be pen on paper, then you kind of need some technique around your drawing. But if your final medium is kind of something like me, like embroidery, if I spend too much time making a really good drawing, that's just a waste of time. Like it's absolute waste of time. I just need a few outlines, a rough idea, and then I've got to get on with the actual medium I'm working in. I think if you enjoy the process of creating a beautiful sketch, that's a different thing. But to think it's necessary, I think is wrong.
I'm just looking at the pieces on your back wall here. So would you say actually that maybe it's the composition, the colour, but also the textures that bring...
well, I mean, I think there's like I think there's like a hierarchy in my work. And I think the number one thing is colour. I think colour trumps everything, and I think if you've got a bad design, it doesn't matter if you've got a good colour palette, but if you've got a really good design, if the colours aren't right, it will never look good. So I think colour's like absolute key, and I think from a distance, that's the first thing anyone ever thinks about my work. I think the second is how you frame it. I think framing is absolutely integral to a piece of art. People like Howard Hodgkin, you know, the fact that you are so controlled about your framing that you would actually incorporate the frame into a painting so someone can't go ahead and mess with it. It's sort of like that intense control.
Yeah.
I think framing is what makes, in something like my work, makes it feel considered, and it can make, again, a design that's completely random suddenly feel like, oh, well, there must have been a thought process behind that because it's in a considered frame.
Yeah.
And then I think the design is the third bit. And then the final bit, I think, is how you stitch it. And I actually think stitching is sort of irrelevant. By the time you've made those other three decisions, I think you could stitch it in a multitude of different ways. You could stitch it in one stitch, you could stitch it in 20 stitches. It will not make a difference to the other three things. So I really think technique is like bottom of the barrel in terms of what makes an actually compelling piece of art. Because also most people only ever see the technique if you step within about 10 centimetres of it. And if you're sort of across a room from it, you're going to be drawn, in like an art gallery, you're drawn to a piece from a distance.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's kind of that first impression thing.
Yeah, but I appreciate, I think that people focus on literally the opposite way. People focus on the technique first, then they focus on the design, and then they choose all the other colour palettes. I think you just flip it the other way around. It becomes much easier.
So we've talked about your technique and, you know, what the business is about. Do you want to tell us how you actually started the business and, you know, the people you surrounded yourself with to actually start it, and, you know, how early you had to start that journey versus, you know, when you launched?
Yeah, happily. So the business launched in sort of June of lockdown, but actually it all went back a lot further than that. And I, in my background, I'd never done any kind of art or anything, and I studied chemistry at university and went into finance, trained as an accountant, went to investment banking, and then I moved into a new bank, and it was really very difficult, kind of difficult environment. I started sewing at that point in time, and that was about 2 years before I launched the business. So for about 18 months, I was planning for the business before we went live. So we went live in June 2020, but it had been in the works for an awful long time before then. And part of the reason it took so long is because I had to save. I saved money so that I would be able to launch the business and have money in the bank and be able to support myself whilst it got off the ground. So I kind of needed to get a lump sum together to be able to start it. And then also I started working from that point with two people, Marc and Rosey, who work on my branding. I started working with them, and I also started working with a web development company really early on. And part of the reason that took quite a long time is because Marc and Rosey were sort of working with me in a way they were sort of doing me a bit of a favour. And so I allowed them, therefore, to fit it into whatever time they had. And we have I wanted to launch the business from the very beginning exactly as my vision was for the business. I'm not the kind of person that can do that sort of minimum viable approach to a business. And we have quite elaborate packaging for our business. And so it took time to actually design it all, build it all up, to order it, to pay for it, everything like that took 18 months. So when I launched, I quit my job in February 2020. And I quit my job partly also because investment banking is just not the kind of job you can have a side hustle with. You know, I was working 14, 15, 16-hour days. Like, you can't run a business alongside that. If I was working anything else, I probably would have run them both parallel. But I left my job, and then COVID hit, and then I launched. And the timing of everything for my business, suddenly people were trapped inside, suddenly people were looking for things to do. It meant that we grew from the beginning in a way that never would have happened without COVID. And actually, one of the main things was right after about a month after I launched, I probably had about 500 Instagram followers, like nothing really at all, kind of promote my business. But a journalist from the FT, How to Spend It, somehow caught on to what I was doing. She got in touch, featured me in an article, and then I think journalists read journalists' work, and so then off the back of that, someone then featured us in Vogue, and then someone featured us in like Harper's Bazaar, and then we got a house and garden, and basically, I think actually what COVID amazingly did for us was give us press in an industry that would never have got press otherwise, because it's so unglamorous, it's so uncool. It's like, it's so not, but now it is quite cool. I have seen in the last 5 years like such a shift in people's attitude towards this craft.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, it really wasn't interesting for people. Now it is.
Yeah, I think in the same way that like people talk about May Morris's embroideries and stuff like that, like I feel all of that is kind of having, you know, or like Phoebe Anna Trequer, like I think all of this art is being talked about a lot more now than it was a few years ago when, as you say, like embroidery just wasn't.
I think it was sort of, it was so held in a kind of regard of kind of for older people, for kind of, it's all really fuddy-duddy, like, that's not cool, I don't want to, I'd be embarrassed if I did it, I don't know what I'd get out of it.
It was seen as old-fashioned.
It was seen as really old-fashioned, and and I think because of that, people wouldn't give it a go, but actually, what I've noticed is, I think one of the reasons, obviously, it grew during lockdown, and obviously post-lockdown, some people did drop off, because like lots of things that happened in lockdown were kind of not necessarily the new norm.
Yeah.
But for lots of people, they actually discovered that slowing down, these sort of patient crafts really help you mentally. I think there is genuinely
to balance with a busy life.
Yeah, and to have the thing that actually physically restrains you, so you have to get off your phone, and so you have to pay attention for something for 20 minutes. Like, I genuinely think for a lot of people, they saw the benefit, and in turn, then have started to be proud and shout about the fact. Like lots of people shout much more about the fact I do sewing in a way they never would have done before. So I do think launched at a good time.
Because you said it launched in June and you'd quit your job in February. So, I mean, that whole period of like March to May, that must have been quite stressful in a way.
It was a bit stressful because actually I had never intended to launch till sort of the summer, later in the summer, because I had no time in my job. I hadn't got any design, I hadn't actually created designs at that point. It's in a ridiculous way. I had got every other aspect of the business, but I didn't have a single design. And so that was part of the intention that time was going to be. I also had started I was working on a website for the business. As it would transpire, the website company who were building the website went bust and left me with no website.
Oh, gosh.
Just before we launched, like a week before we launched, and things like that. So, and then all our packaging got stuck in customs, like it was impossible for suppliers to get things to us. Like, as much as it's a great time, it was also an incredibly logistically challenging time. So in an ideal world, I would have started from April or something like this. Even a couple of months at that point in time would have made the world a difference.
Yeah.
But I genuinely could not get stuff, and I did not, and then, you know, you get problems.
So what did you do about the website then?
Built it myself instead, and actually until last October, for the first 3.5 years, we were still on the website I built, and it was the best thing ever to happen to me, because it showed me you can do everything yourself. Like, there is so much stuff that we are told, you kind of have the impression, oh, I must have a professional do that. Yeah. I think having to build my own website was like the best thing ever.
So what are things that you delegated to others, or you found freelancers to help you with, etc., and what are things that you kept within your remit to get going at the beginning?
So the only thing we delegated was branding.
Okay.
And our entire branding went to Marc and Rosey, who still work with me today, and I gave them total free reign over vision, and all I did was try to make their vision a reality. Like, tried not to scrimp, tried not to kind of take their vision and sort of water it down.
Yeah.
And I actually also, I never really comment at all on anything they do. I sort of feel like they own the way someone feels about art when they receive a product. I feel like that is not mine, that is Marc and Rosey's in a way. So I don't interfere. When you have good people, like, let them do their job. Yeah. And outside of that, everything else I did myself, and then I hired my first person, Georgina, in the January the following year. So I did end up getting to a point where I was doing sort of like 4 a.m. finishes throughout December, like packing kits. And at that point, I was actually screen printing all the fabric myself and everything as well.
Right, even that.
Yeah,
okay.
so we really, really didn't outsource anything. And we still don't. Like, we still, as a business, we have Marc Rosey. We have now a screen printer, Amy, who's based up in Yorkshire. We have a girl, Natalie, who makes my piping for me, she's based up in Yorkshire as well, where I'm from.
Yeah.
We have a web developer, Lindsay, who's in London. Like, we have a handful of our people we work with, but I try to keep everything in-house because I just think we care the most about what we're doing. And I also think people sort of can make what they're doing appear more complicated than what it is. And I'm not, I'm northern. I'm stingy. I'm not prepared to, I'm very bad at paying for something I think I could do myself, which obviously doesn't always work because we get overloaded, but equally I have a very good team.
So what are lessons learnt then from the lasts?
I think number one is sort of to listen and interact with the people using your product. I think far too much time could be spent on trying to find new customers than actually just making the ones you've already got happy.
Yes, okay.
And so I think you got to love your customer and get to know them and everything. I think that's one of the things that has made me most passionate about my business is I know the people it impacts, like by name. I know them by face. I meet them, so I think that's really important. I think just getting on with stuff and not waiting for things to be perfect is super important. I think when everything we do, I will sort of set a deadline. And usually it's like 2 weeks before we'd actually be ready on anything. But we always make it.
Yeah.
And so I think there is an element of you just got to get on with it. And there's a little bit of desperation that I also think is really important. Like, if you have things you're passionate about and things you want to be able to do, I think the kind of desperation in a way to be able to do those things actually can drive you to make quite interesting business decisions. So I think like that's good. And then, I mean, as everyone would say it, but like being resilient.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard.
It's a roller coaster.
It's like, it's an absolute roller coaster and it is really hard. And I think where we are now as a business, we're like 5 years in. I think our position at 5 years in is finally, I feel like I know where we're on the right track, and that has to be taken 5 years of belief.
Yes.
Not to get to that point. If I had known from the beginning it was going to take me 5 years before I actually was really confident where we were going, I would never have done it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really hard, but I think that's why naivety is good.
Like when you're, whereas when you're in the thick of it, you just kind of get on with it.
You just keep going and then suddenly, but I do think,
So it's taken sort of 5 years for the business to kind of like mature and like grow into itself.
To get to a point where you really know who you are as a business and what your purpose is and what your customers want from you and what you can do for them. I genuinely think we couldn't have done it quicker.
How did you fund your business at the beginning and how do you keep investing into it now?
So when I first started, I just saved everything from and I was working in a well-paid job, so I could save like a reasonable lump sum. And I needed quite a reasonable lump sum because our packaging is really expensive. Like it's sort of, and I was ordering low quantities, and so I had to firstly be able to buy quite a lot of inventory, and also I was sort of investing for building a website and things like that.
Yeah.
And I needed to be able to cover my costs. I did actually, when I left banking, then also for about 4 months, kind of work in a part-time kind of financial advisory, helping a business build their business plan and financial forecasts type thing for about 4 months. But then I stopped that because actually it was taking up too much time. So I self-funded everything from the beginning, and then since then we have just reinvested everything, and we reinvest everything every year. Like, we are still at a point where everything we make goes into developing the next thing.
Yeah.
And we will probably be in that state for another 3, 4, 5 years. And then in that amount of time, then we should get to a point where we can actually then start feeling like you've got kind of cash flow that's coming out of the business. But for the time being, we're pretty much to closed loop.
Yeah.
And it meant like, obviously now we're in a position where we could get investment. But why would I give someone
Creative control, I guess.
Or why would I give up part of something I have created and taking all the risk over just at the moment it's actually coming good? Like, that would be madness to me. So as much as I think it's really frustrating at times, because I have so many ideas, like so many things I know would be popular.
But you've got to pick and choose.
I have to pick and choose. I've got to be patient. Like, I've got to wait till I can afford to do the idea. I can't just kind of get money in to do it. So it makes us be patient. But I think in turn, by having to be patient, it means you do have to be really selective about ideas. And also it means you don't have, it's a bit of the kind of why we do everything in-house. You have to be really careful about your cash.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the danger in a business is if you have too much, you can waste more. And I think we're quite, as a business, quite good at not wasting anything because we don't have, because we everything matters.
Yeah, everything, you literally know where it comes from because you've created it yourself, and so you don't want to waste it. But also I do think there's a certain element of it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I like to sit with my ideas for a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
And I often, you know, I'll sort of like journal it and sort of like keep track of all the ideas that I'm having, and then I sort of like read back on everything that I've written and over the coming months I'll see whether I keep having the same ideas and like whether it comes back up, and then if it keeps coming up, then I'm like, okay, that's something, I'm onto something, or I'm really passionate about this.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, I think I have one idea of an entirely new range which requires quite a lot of upfront investment, but it slightly transitions the business. That idea is something I've been wanting to do for 2 years, and I had in my head that I was going to do it next year, but I just actually still don't think we're ready. So by the time we actually do it, I will have probably been patient for 4 years.
Okay, that is a long time.
Like, I think there is immense, and that's the annoying thing with bootstrapping a business, is if you bootstrap a business, you inevitably slightly slow down the growth of your business. But equally, I think when you do get around something, you make it more sustainable. And they say it takes 10 years to make something a brand. I think in a way, by making life hard for yourself, by not having a lot of cash and not having available funds, you actually focus on really creating something that people believe in. And that's, you know, we don't do any paid advertising. All our growth has been organic. People come to us now. We don't wholesale anywhere. We kind of have stayed really controlled in how we're going to market, and that inevitably means it's slower. But I think it's more we're more resilient because of it.
Slow and steady.
Slow and steady, I think, does win the race. I'm full on tortoise here. So
no, but I get that, and I think that's a good way to be. You talk about sort of, you know, it's taken 5 years to get to know yourself and who you are as a business. And one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you is I do feel that you are very values driven and you have a very strong ethos as a business. And, you know, from an outsider looking in, it comes across in a good way. And so I kind of wanted to approach that from the topic of, you know, collaborations. You know, is that also values led? You know, do you kind of look at potential collaborations and think, do they align with what we do? Yes or no?
I mean, collaborations is not something we historically did a lot of, and it's only something we started looking at in the last couple of years because as a business we've started getting a bit more interest and therefore quite a lot more approaches about things. I'm very bad at I never do outbound sort of. I'm very bad at doing anything, actively going after anything. So everything that happens for us is sort of inbound, and we've noticed a lot more coming our way. And I think our purpose as a business is, in 3 words, is basically we empower creativity, and that has to define everything about what we do. And so if we are approaching a collaboration, the idea of the collaboration should be that it has to have something to do with empowering creativity. So that's why I wouldn't do something like a homewares collaboration, because how does designing a tablecloth do anything to empower anyone's creativity? You know, it sort of gives me a nice framework to make decisions easily from. But one of the challenges of that is that it's all well and good having a framework, but also sometimes you can have a bit of a vanity project type approach, where you get approached by something that's a really shiny object and you think, oh, it's going to have amazing exposure for my business, and yeah, it might not totally align with my values.
But it's a great name.
But it's a great name, and oh, won't it be great marketing? And you can find all sorts of ways to justify things. And we had one of these earlier in the year, and actually I got totally sucked in potentially by the vanity idea of it all, that I wanted to be able to tell people about it. I wanted people to see it. I wanted the Instagram response that it would generate. But actually, it wasn't aligned to the business. And so in the end, we ended up both going our separate ways, walking away from the collaboration because of the fact I wasn't willing to sacrifice my creative freedom. And they required, from a commercial perspective, me to do things which were more aligned with what they wanted. And I wasn't prepared to do that. And actually, I should have foreseen that from the beginning. Whereas, say, we had another collaboration that just launched last week, which was with Morris & Co., kind of William Morris, all, arts and craft legend, all the company associated with all his designs, where they wanted me to design and make pieces to celebrate their new range. I was never going to be comfortable, or I was never going to be able to make all the pieces myself. I don't have the time. And as much as you can find lots of places to outsource embroidery, I wouldn't be comfortable with the idea of it being someone nameless making it. And so there's a charity I've worked with for years called Oshana, and they run sewing groups with Syrian refugees living in camps in Lebanon. I've worked with them for the last 4 years. So it was like a perfect opportunity to say, well, I will design the pieces. Let's use Oshana, let's have them stitch it, and alongside each piece, let's tell the story of the woman who stitched the piece, and let's sign their name on it, have a photo of them, so whoever receives it knows who did it. And then we're both promoted by the kind of mega power of Morris & Co.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is the kind of collaboration that fits to my purpose, because it is showing the impact creativity has on people's lives. It may not be saying, here, have a go at this one, because that's going to help your creativity, but you can look at that project and you can say, look at what Fatima did, and look at what the impact that actually embroidery has had on her life. And then you can actually feel a sort of sense of connection of, that might be something I could do. Maybe that would benefit me. Maybe I should try it. So I think it's really hard, because I think it's always this constant issue with running your own business, particularly if you're the creative behind the business, is it's really hard to sometimes rationalise what's like vanity and what's sanity. But having a purpose really helps do that, because in a way you just have that be your framework.
Yeah, I think I relate to that. I mean, I'm in the very early stages of, sort of brainstorming and putting into place my own project, and it's really interesting because I'll have a gut response to something, but I need to justify it. And you can't really justify something until you have that purpose, that overarching purpose.
Exactly. And I think it is quite good, because it almost becomes like the other person in the room. Yeah. I feel like my purpose is like constantly the other thing in the room that's basically, should we do this? Yeah. Or is this just something we could do?
It's almost like a parent that's like, really? You're doing
exactly.
this? Are you sure?
and people, because also you'll find like people will ask you for stuff, and then you'll think, oh, that would be really popular.
Yeah.
And so many times, so many people ask us, I like your designs, but can I get a finished piece? And I think if I could go into a business, work with some factory and do loads of finished pieces, but what would that have to do with my purpose?
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of, I think it's quite important to define it.
Yeah.
That whole start with the why idea.
Yeah.
I actually do think, I believe.
Did you have the why from the beginning?
No. At the beginning, I just wanted people to sew.
Okay. So how different is your business? How different is the Fabled Thread, now compared to when you started, or what you thought it was going to be?
Entirely. It's so different. When I started, I genuinely just thought, I love sewing, and I think that sewing's a bit stale, a bit fuddy-duddy. I'd like to do some kind of more interesting kits. Now I feel like that is part of what we do, but it is helping people achieve the purpose. But I think we have so many different ways we do things now, and I would never have envisaged what we are now at the beginning. And the one thing that's hard is that I think my business is quite complicated, and I'm super lucky that I have a very dedicated, passionate audience. but there is an element that it takes you time to kind of understand everything we're doing. So most people will come to the website and they will just see embroidery kits and sort of, and that's okay. And so they'll see that. But actually, the moment you sort of spend a bit more time on any of our kind of YouTube, any of our Instagram, any of our channels, you sort of then start slowly but surely discovering all the different kind of strings to what we're doing. And in a way, that creates a bit of a feeling of, if you've managed to work out what we do, then you kind of almost earned a medal and you're now part of a kind of club of people. And so I don't think anyone would design a business like this from the beginning, in terms of it's so complicated. We have so many different kind of product SKUs. We have random like digital products, real products, in-person products. Like we have so many different things we're doing.
Yeah, 'cause you do events and
we
stuff
do
like that.
events.
And you've got the blog as well.
We have blogs, so we have
only, right?
we have a paywall area of the website just for members. Like the whole everything we do is quite complicated, and it's one of the reasons we do everything in-house, because we could never outsource any part of our business because it would be so complicated for anyone else to do. So I would never have designed a business like this. And I'm not sure I'd advise anyone to design a business quite as complicated. It'd be quite interesting to see in like a few years' time, should we go back and do like a big rationalise everything and work out what exactly is essential and what isn't. I think that's probably something we'll have to do in a few years' time, because I just add.
I'm just laughing, imagining like if a management consultant walked in here, like...
Yeah, they'd say, what are you doing? Like, because I have so many sort of, and I'm lucky, I have a team of people who are, we are all passionate and so enthusiastic, but the number of weird ideas I come in with, and, you know, even yesterday I was sort of filming a video about this idea I've had to do a colour palette challenge, where I basically don't tell anyone what they're about to receive, and you kind of get a parcel in the post that's totally random objects and you have to make a design out of it. Like, it's weird stuff like that, which if I'd done that from the beginning, no one would understand.
Yes.
If I do it right now, I know I've got people who will take the time to understand it and also be really excited about it.
Well, you've got people, again, who've been there from the beginning, and they've, you know, they can now rise to that challenge in a way that they wouldn't have had the confidence to at the beginning. But they're your success story, right?
Yeah, but you also don't have to have like been there from the beginning, in terms of, I think one of the things is some people I see, because you see people's like orders come in, and some people will start and within 3 months they will have done 3 like kits stepping up, and then you'll see them order. We sell plain fabric, say. You'll see them come in and place an order for plain fabric and have chosen a few bobbins, and I always think, oh yes, like, because I just think how exciting.
Like
you've only been with me for 4 months, but you know, like you now know what you're doing, like, and you're just choosing some fabric, and I just think like that is the dream situation. Is I love it when I see those orders, like an order come in for an unpainted frame, bit of fabric, some paints. I just think how exciting. I'd love to know what you're making.
That's cool. And do people share it with
people
you?
Share, like people are really good. People share. We get sent loads of pictures, and it's really, and I just love it to see it. And I also have loads of WhatsApp groups on my phone from all my workshops I run.
Amazing.
WhatsApp groups from after, where everyone's sort of like sharing the photos of what they've been working on, and then people stay in touch for like months and months after. So it is a real
community building.
And that's exciting for me. That's what, like, I work really hard. That's what makes me work hard.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you actually about that. I mean, because your role is so multifaceted. I mean, you're basically the person coming up with all the creative ideas for new products, etc. You're also, as the face of the business, you're the one who's leading all the workshops, and you do quite a lot of these events. And then you also, there's obviously a lot in terms of marketing that goes out, that again, it's, you know, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or, you know, your blog, like that's all you, isn't it?
Yes.
So do you want
like
how much time do you actually spend on the marketing elements?
Marketing is the majority of my job in a way, but it's sort of like, it's so hard sometimes to work out where's one thing begin and the other thing end, because I would say marketing is the majority of my job. I have in my team Jen, who is kind of spends half her time on marketing as well, and she joined the team in June as she was maternity cover for my Georgina, our studio manager, and then she will slowly, when Georgina comes back, she will go full-time marketing. But she's the first time I've had any help from a marketing perspective. Until that point, we've done everything myself, and part of, I think, what's hard to balance is sort of doing all these sides of the business whilst doing all the creative side and kind of keeping everything afloat, make sure everyone's happy, everyone knows what they're doing, which does mean that I do work awfully hard. Like I work a lot of hours and there's no kind of two ways about it. I'll work easily one day a weekend, I'll work late in the week. But one of my friends who, before I started the business, who had his own business, basically said to me, you will be as stressed but as you are in banking, but it is a positive stress, not a negative stress. And I think that is 100% it. Like I can stop at any moment. I make my life harder for myself because I'm passionate about what I do and I have new ideas and I want to do it. Like it's my choice. And I think at the end of the day, like that is the absolute fundamental thing. And also what's exciting is you get to genuinely see the tangible results of your work. Like we started doing videos in June. And Jen is great because Jen sort of basically, she tells me what she thinks I should record. It's really hard to do it yourself. I think sometimes it's hard to see what other people might find interesting. And then she edits them for me and I do all the filming. But we just immediately, you see an uptick. Like then suddenly you've got more people coming to you. Suddenly you've got kind of more people engaging with you. You've got more comments on things. And that's the issue, I think, of being, the whole self-employed thing is, one of the difficulties is when things start going well, you just want to do more of it. And that can be detrimental to work-life balance.
Yes, but also I guess it's knowing when to get outside voices in. Because as you say, is that balance of like, okay, well, you wouldn't want investors coming in and being like, where's the profit? But having Jen come in and telling you, oh, like, you should try this, and I think people would like that. But it's that knowing when, like, which bits to let go and open up to someone else's idea and which bits to kind of keep. It's tricky, isn't it?
I think so, but I think I'm like a very open kind of person, and I'm quite kind of vulnerable and with everything we're doing. And I think within the company itself and within the team, everyone is very much speaks their mind, and I want people to sort of tell me what to do. I have to be the face of the business, like someone has to be. And I have to be able to, and I'm the best placed person to talk passionately about why we do what we do. And as much as sometimes maybe I don't want to be that person always, that's not my choice. Like I have a business to sustain, I have people's jobs to sustain. Like I have to get up in the morning and I've got to record that video because that's my job. Like, I think there is a reality of, and by having people around me who say to me, right, today you're doing this, that's amazing, because that's what makes it sustainable. It's not like it's not easy, but it's incredibly rewarding.
So, but work-life balance, you'd
it's
say?
not really a thing. But luckily, I mean, my husband, we're both very passionate about what we do. And we both have spent lots of our life working in jobs we hate and working very hard in jobs we don't like. And every single day of the week, I would take a job I love. I would take stimulation over boredom. And if that stimulation means that you kind of each spend a day of the weekend, this is not sustainable for the rest of our lives.
No.
But for right now, I'm very happy. And I think that's the difference. It's like, it might be hard work, but...
Yeah, it's work that you choose.
Exactly. I mean, like we were saying, you know, I'll pull a late night because I'm having to finish an embroidery. Like, that's not hard work. Like, that's not bad. Like, that, I'll take that. I've spent many late nights stuck in Excel. I think I'd much rather be kind of up at 2 in the morning because I'm sewing.
Yeah, so I can imagine you like on the sofa with Roger next to you. And
exactly. I get through a lot of audiobooks. And that's one of the issues, I guess, as a creative business founder, is that my creative activities actually are still fitted into the evenings. I actually don't spend most of my day doing creative stuff. And that's one of the hard things, is almost I'm still having as much time on my hobby as I did in other jobs before now. But
because your role is now much more like on the strategy and the marketing and
exactly. But the marketing is fun. I think I enjoy the marketing side. Like, I love writing journal articles. I love writing about blog content. I like thinking of new ideas and stuff.
Yeah, you've also talked about, I think you've been vocal about trying to own your own assets.
Yes.
With regards to marketing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I think basically I did really well right at the beginning of the business on Instagram. The algorithm just really liked me. And I used to post pictures of my interiors. My interiors were quite, I had a kind of very maximalist flat that got a lot of interest, and every single time I post a picture of it, Instagram would love it and I'd get loads of followers. And for about 3 years almost, I felt like I could do no wrong. So I just focused on that one thing all in. And then in like the summer of 2022 or something, I don't know what happened, but almost overnight, engagement just massively dropped.
Right.
And we went from sort of kind of having 25% of my website traffic coming from Instagram to it suddenly dropping. And it just showed me the dependence I had on one channel. And actually, I spent about 9-12 months wallowing, I would say.
Oh, really?
And really like not coming up with a plan B and just trying to do things that would make the platforms like me again. Like I would produce reels and then I get disheartened because the reel didn't do well. And actually it was great because what it taught me is that I wasted so much time. Like I just wasted so much time when I could have been doing stuff that was really positive and enjoyable. And so that's one of the reasons we did a big new website last year, so that we had far more of the website is dedicated to content.
Right.
Far more of the website is dedicated to video, far more of the website is dedicated to journals. Like our website is very kind of content heavy because actually I want to write the things I'm interested in. I want to create the videos I'm interested in. I want to do the stuff I enjoy. And that in turn becomes my marketing. And then I post that to Instagram. But Instagram is not where the place which holds my content anymore.
Yes.
And I am a much happier person for that. And I think we have a much stronger business for that. We have a business where we own everything and we are not dependent on one thing going down. And we are now equally spread across loads of social media channels, but our absolute core source of traffic is direct searches. Like people directly coming to us. That's our
amazing.
And yeah, so it's sort of the whole thing is a bit of a journey. And again, it's the same thing of just move forward in a positive way than dwell on the negatives or the bits where it's hard. I think if you spend too long dwelling on the bits that are hard, you'd never get anywhere.
That's something that I always like to bring up is, fear, anxiety, sort of in a way managing negative emotions and like riding that wave, and how, whether that can even like fuel.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like we said before, I think resilience is really important in having a business. And I think particularly if you are creative behind your business, you're exposing a bit of your soul. Like every single kit we do is my own design. Every piece of content I put out is my own aesthetic. I'm not just asking you to sort of buy into a product I've designed. I'm asking you to buy into a piece of art I've created. It's very exposing, and it feels at times really scary because particularly when things have gone well, that's great. But then you feel like at any moment, any new launch, you think, God, I hope people like this, or am I going mad? And likewise, things can feel personal. Like you can, if you kind of spend too much time thinking about it, it all can feel really. If something hasn't gone well, it can feel really like it's a personal slight or something. And actually, it never is. It just can be circumstantial. It can be that something you liked maybe isn't an immediate hit, but it's going to be in the long run. And I definitely feel like one of my great things for me is my husband is completely unemotional and not supportive about my emotions, which actually is amazing because if I go home and I sort of want to moan, then he just shuts it down sort of quite early on, and he just says, like, just pull yourself together, get on with it. A little bit, which in a way is at times annoying because sometimes you do want someone just to, but actually more often than not, having Harry as a kind of, what am I moaning about? Like, why am I just move forward? I think I'm really lucky to have someone who doesn't allow me to dwell on things because there's loads of things that go wrong. Like, I casually talk about the collaboration not going well this summer. That was like had a major knock-on impact on my confidence. Or things like people we work with when we built our new website this year, the whole relationship massively broke down. I ended up like having a bit where my website was sort of held hostage for a while.
Oh my God.
Like there are loads and loads of things that go wrong. There is stock that doesn't come. There's things I misorder. There's things that we make mistakes on. But there is absolutely no point thinking on it any of it for too long. I sort of feel like I give myself a day to dwell on it, and then get on with it, because I'm so lucky. Like, and also I think it's really important. I worked in lots of work environments where people weren't happy. The last thing I want to do is create an environment where there's stress. And so with everything I do, I'm in the really privileged position that I get to shape my own work environment, and I'm not going to allow that work environment to be one that's full of the same attitudes that happened in banking.
And like the ups and downs.
I'm not,
like the boss's mood.
Yeah, oh God, I mean, I don't want, exactly. Yeah. If I'm feeling like I'm stressed about something, then don't come in, don't bring that on to people. That's not their fault, that's just me being, and that actually, so I think it is it's hard, and you get anxiety, but I'm much better now than I was before. I'm getting much, much better.
I think it's learning. I think from experience, you kind of get. I mean, I'm way behind you on my journey. You know, I'm just starting, but even just with, as you say, developing a website or like all the different things that I've been working on behind the scenes, it's sort of been, you know, something will go well and you're very excited, and something will go wrong and you're like really anxious, and then it happens again and again, and then you're like, hang on a second.
Yeah.
It's happened before and I felt okay about it again.
Exactly.
And then it went, you know, or it went well, then the next day it solved itself or whatever it was. And so you kind of try to like hold your horses on your emotions.
No, absolutely. I think it is that kind of trying as best you can to control your emotions and work out what's your kind of coping strategy but don't have emotional responses to things, and try not to take anything personally. Which is hard, and also you're not like but also we're not like saving the world. No. If something goes wrong, and every time things have gone wrong for me, and you know, and things where it's either cost me loads or something like that, also nothing ever can't be fixed. And my dad always says to me, like, the best lessons are the most expensive. And maybe that is a Yorkshireman saying that again, but I genuinely do think, actually, if you, and also in a ridiculous way, now I also write articles, and I write really openly to my studio members. Every time something goes wrong, I always think, well, that's a great article. Yeah, like, and actually, so you can like reframe it all as, I sometimes want things to go wrong, because I actually think if I learn from it, then that makes better, more interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
so,
and it might help someone else.
Exactly. So I do think there's a sort of positive to things going negatively.
Yeah, no,
you've got to write about it.
Exactly.
Channel it.
But you've got to, I think you've got to keep going for it to become a positive. Where do you see yourself in 5 years then? Where do you see your business?
I mean, I absolutely love this business. I just want us to keep growing. I want to keep growing, reach more people. I will want to run this business, I feel like, forever. This is like, the Fabled Thread is my life. And the only thing I see happening in my very long run is that at some point I would like to get to a point where I also feel confident to go and say, have my own studio, and alongside running the business, have my own art practice where I am selling my own work. And that's sort of, I see myself being sort of old and grey with the wonderful Fabled Thread and an incredible studio where I've got sort of vats of acid for etching in, and I've got sort of lino presses, and I've got all my various crafts all gathered in one place. And I think that's the vision I have for my life, is I just want a life where we build a business that's really stable, really secure, and really got making people really happy, and in parallel that I can keep being creative and expressing myself.
Yeah, sounds like you're not afraid of growing, but also like delegating and building a strong team.
I mean, I love every member of my team. I think is absolutely brilliant. We have an amazing team here, and if I could have, you know, 4 times those people around me, I'd just feel 4 times more positive, because we sort of, I think they all bring so much to everything we do. So I love having a busy, fun life, and so I want to grow the business. I'm ambitious, you know, that hasn't gone, but I'm ambitious to grow the business into something that is super sustainable. I want this to be a brand legacy. I think it can be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
It's been really inspiring talking to you. I hope it'll be inspiring for others listening in, and Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, really, it's really enjoyable. It's nice to talk about it.
I would of course encourage you to have a look at the Fabled Threads YouTube channel, website and Instagram, all of which I have listed below, so you can see what Eppie's got planned for this year. She is always bursting with creativity, so no doubt by the time this interview goes live, she'll have come up with at least half another dozen launches, and long may it continue. So thank you for watching. It means a lot, especially as at this moment the channel is entirely self-funded. Please spread the word, like, share, subscribe, you know, the usual. See you next week.
Take one.
Yes. Sorry, future James.
Yeah. Substandard again.
Yeah, exactly. Alienor is on a learning curve.
Yeah.